Maybe we need a special seat, Garrett, or something.
Where's the
He needs to run.
There's so much I can say about working with Garrett over the past 10 years. It's funny, every time I thought about what I was going to say, there was only one thing that kept coming to mind. What a grump. Now, I don't know if anyone else has noticed, ever since Garrett started slowing down at work, I've actually noticed something seriously wrong with his face. It almost looks like he's smiling. I'm sure a lot of people have wondered. I'm sure a lot of people have wondered how we put up with someone so grumpy over the past 10 years. Admittedly, I was scared of Garrett when I first started working. But after Jack Bradley generously gave me a book entitled How to Interpret the Various Grumpy Facial Expressions of Garrett, I learned how to tell the subtle difference between grumpy and happy. There was a big difference there. But after I settled out, I saw beyond the hard exterior to one of the most lovable, gentle, and caring people I've ever met in my life. That is genuine. I am pretty lucky to have had Garrett as my supervisor and mentor. Garrett did push me beyond my self-imposed limits. One of my favourite examples of this is we got into a heated debate about me applying for the postgraduate student prize. I was convinced that I wasn't going to get it and didn't want to waste my time writing it up. Like every argument I've had with Garrett, he won. So I reluctantly submitted the application. Fast forward to one frantic moment during the COVID period. I get a call from Garrett letting me know that I was the successful applicant. Not only was I wanted to be the recipient of this award, but the real reward for me was knowing that Garrett saw something in me that I didn't and trusted in my work. Garrett, I am standing here right now to say, you're right.
I'm almost right.
Is that voice?
Not only has he supported me, but I've seen him support others. So much so that Steph and I nominated Garrett for an award for the supervisor award at USW. Funny story for those who don't know, when he was notified that he won the award, he deleted the email thinking it was spam because there was a grammatical error. He literally missed his award ceremony. But he got the award.
Congratulations!
Garrett hasn't just been an incredible boss and supervisor, he's also had a massive impact on my personal life. From unknowingly getting me laid by a muscle hunk at a work event, being a shoulder to cry on after a hysterically traumatizing sex experience after a conference, which I can honestly say I have never seen Garrett laugh so hysterically when I was telling you. The only time I've seen him laugh that hysterically. But in all seriousness, Garrett is the sort of person that refused to leave my side in Amsterdam because he knew I was going through a rough time. Always had my best interests at heart, even though it meant he may have suffered. Rather than criticising me for being who I am, learned to speak more so we can get the work done. And took a chance on a shy, innocent guy and continuously helped.
We're talking about
It is
the
innocent.
distant past.
Yeah. Well, that part, yeah, definitely. And continuously helping me to find my voice and confidence. Garrett, I'd never actually said I'm a lucky person, but I'm the luckiest person to have had you as my supervisor. There are two things I want you to know. One, you've left an indelible mark in my life, one so profound that it's changed the direction since meeting you. And two, I'm really going to miss you from face of work. Happy retirement.
So this is your life, mate. Car.
The one thing what Garrett asked me about this event is like nothing about his attention.
bit emotional. So let's bring it back to hard reality. This is actually, I feel like this is a really historic moment on so many levels. Firstly, because Heather's never had a retirement party before, and you know, it says something about where we are in the broader picture, that in this field, we have a retirement party. So, you know, on that level, it's historic. And, you know, if you, to think about the broader history, you know, any of you who have watched that abominable series In Your Blood that we were talking about, you know, just even though it's not a great thing and it got bits of history wrong and it was all over the place, it just shows where we've come and where we've come with prevention because of the work that Garrett led in those very early days. For those of you who haven't seen the series, Garrett's campaign is there in the wrong place at the wrong time. But if you actually haven't seen the Rubber Me campaign, which was one of the first safe sex campaigns in the world, led by gay men, led by community, not led by government actually, in fact rejected by government.
It had a big direct penis.
Yeah. So you can see it. It's at the Revolution exhibition that's on at the State Gallery at the moment, the State Art Gallery at the moment. I really recommend it. It's got a nice wall panel which has got it up there, so you should go. So should you. So yeah, I mean, you know, Garrett led this field, was one of the original originators, but the idea that you could base research in community, led by community, but with thorough academic frameworks, we could put those things together and it would make a difference. And that we would work with community partners, and community partners would want to work with us. You know, one thing I'm struck with as a person who does some of my work in HIV prevention and others elsewhere is that, you know, in other health fields, people don't get how involved community should be involved in research. They speak the language, they talk about consumer involvement in research. So there is recognition that it's important, but that I haven't seen a field. There might be some others there, but out there where it's emerging and getting better. But I think the role of gay activists like Garrett getting involved with research for the good of their community 40 years ago now, I suppose, now, isn't it? It's extraordinary, and Garrett was right there at that time and made a big difference. So, you know, all of us here have a lot to thank you for that. And then we have your 40 years of research. I mean, so, you know, Garrett and I are almost contemporaries, and so, you know, we joined within 4 years of each other, maybe, something like that, 3 years of each other at the Kirby. So, you know, I learnt an enormous amount from Garrett because I didn't have that background in community activism, and it sort of didn't come really naturally to me, but Garrett taught me how important it was, and the more I, you know, saw what he did and learned about it, the more I realised that it was absolutely the way to go and the way to have maximum health impact, which is, you know, why I hope a lot of us get involved in this field, because we want to impact health. We want to, you know, maximise prevention, and that it's not always about disease as well. It's also about, you know, people wanting to live their best lives in a broader sense. So, Garrett, I hope you're leaving the Kirby. I hope it's not going to be the last we see of you. So it's lovely that you have decided that you wanted to hold it here today, because it introduced us all to your retirement life, and that's a great thing. So thank you for sharing that with us. I feel like, you know, you could come up and do it again sometime. And yeah, I just give you the very best wishes for your retirement. You deserve a fantastic retirement. I hope you and Trevor have a fabulous time in your lovely house. I still wonder how you can deal with that. Sorry, here was a time that you see it seems like you love it, and you know, why not? So thank you. This is the rest of your present, which is, I believe, another water feature to expand your range down there. So thank you very much, Garrett. And before we ask Garrett to respond, you know, all of you, all of us who work with him, and I should have warned you, but is there anybody else who wants to say a few words? If you don't do it now, make sure you talk to Garrett later.
Can I?
So, Yes, please.
I haven't prepared anything, but Garrett and I go back a long way. And I would just have to say that I think that a lot of what's happened at our end of the Kirby is all about what you've brought to it, and people want to work in that field because of you. And I think that Garrett's really good at identifying people's strengths and encouraging them to get involved and care about the work. And even though, as Mo so simply put it, often you seem quite grumpy. There's a lot going on, and I think that you always, you really care, and it really comes through. And that everybody can kind of connect to the fact that you care about people. Thank you.
This year, Lara and I know each other.
I might say something. So, we had to write something for an electronic farewell card for you. And I remember it was like a 5 p.m. deadline that had to put on it, and I started at about 3 p.m. But it took me so long to think about what to say, because we met, I think, in 89 or 90, 99, I think 89. So I started working for Acon in May 1989 and was driving around the western suburbs going to beats to talk to them about sex. And Garrett had been doing a survey of bisexual men who used beats in the western suburbs, I think in 88 into 89. But I think when that finished, he didn't have work, and Garrett asked Don Baxter for some work, and so for a little while we were working together doing beats outreach. And I remember meeting this terrifying man who was quite grumpy a lot of the time. But yeah, that didn't last very long. But I mean, everything that Mo said, I think really resonated with me, and I think certainly had an enormous influence on not just the work that I did before I joined the Kirby and got in a PhD, but while I was working at Acon and while I was working as a fan. I do remember the liaison meetings with CQBAX and Jim Crawford. They used to have them. I would go sometimes as the Acon rep, and they would shout and scream at each other in front of each other.
Me?
Yeah, that too. It was shocking. But anyway, but yeah, it's been wonderful working with you. I think everything Mike said
Thank you all. It's really lovely. And thanks for coming out. Trevor's and Tony. They're very proud of it, and we obviously love it. Hopefully you've enjoyed yourselves here too. And I hope you can also see why we've chosen to move up here, and I guess over the coming months and years, you think drop by when you come up here. So this is something that I can't say I really ever envisaged, and it's not just saying farewell to you all, but effectively the Kirby as a whole, and even to UNSW, because while I've worked with Kirby for 30 plus years now, my relationship to UNSW goes back even further. So I don't know if you know, but I used to work in sociology before, and yeah, my PhD in UNSW. No, I've got a long history with UNSW. But I'm also retiring, so I'm saying farewell to gainful employment, which is sort of hard for me to get my head around. I've been in full-time employment my entire adult life, and I never really envisaged not being. So, yeah, it's going to be quite a change. 30 years is a long time to have worked in the same place. Before I started at the Kirby, I'd never worked anywhere for more than a couple of years at most. So clearly, the Kirby is sort of like my working home. And that sort of thing doesn't happen very easily, probably not very often for people. But it seems to be something that happens quite often for people who work at the Kirby. To be at home in your workplace, even when it's not necessarily a physical location, like as we often are now, it has to be a right fit both personally and philosophically. And that's ultimately about the people. You need to like the people you work with, and you need to be able to respect them. Of course, you can't really necessarily like everybody, but respect is fundamental. It really is. And for me, that comes from passion and commitment. Just like what Lara was referring to.
Not quite so eloquent.
I started out my working life doing things that I believed in, working for the benefit of my community, and that's never changed. And I'm immensely fortunate that I was able to do that in life. Most people don't get that opportunity. For me, that commitment to community was both selfish and altruistic. The gay community gave me the capacity to live my own genuine life. And I've always wanted to feel that I was helping to make that true for others as well. Lynn, who many of you know from the Social Research Centre, has observed in the past that I judge people in the sector based on my perception of their motivations. If I'm not convinced that they're doing their work out of desire to benefit vulnerable people, then I can be pretty dismissive of them. I'm not unhappy with that characterisation. I think that's fair enough. Fortunately, for the most part, people who work at the Kirby, and particularly in this program, have tended to be very well motivated. As a side note, from what I've observed over the years, the few odd people who haven't worked out have mostly invariably just seen it as no more than a job. So take that into consideration when you think about employing new people. We have a culture here that, even if it mostly goes unspoken, is very important and precious. Try to preserve it. I could sing the praises of many of you, and despite my off-tones gruffness, I hope you all know how much I've enjoyed working with you and my appreciation for your skills, but especially for your passion. Some of you I've worked with for many, many years, and some have come along more recently. I'm not going to pick people out. Was that? But that said, Andrew, you've been a great boss. I know you were probably a bit intimidated by the prospect of trying to supervise me. Over 25 years.
Supervise Garrett?
But you got the hang of it. But you got the hang of it pretty quickly. In other words, you let me do my own thing. And only interfered, somewhat trepidatiously, I would say, when there was a real prospect of a problem arising. Thanks for that. I think we made a really good team in the end. Those of you who had to put up with me as your supervisor, sorry I put you through so much. But if there's one thing I hope you learned from that is to just do it. Just do it. Most of the time, things work out in the end, and making mistakes is rarely as big a deal as you think. Steve's described me as being pragmatic, and I hope that's true. because to me that's the most sensible approach to everything. Sure, have your principles, but accept that rarely is anything perfect in life. Just making the effort and giving it your best shot is way better than giving up before you start. The question of my retirement has been a consideration for a few years, but I think many people thought I'd never retire. I probably thought that myself. Things change. A few years ago I was leading several studies and had funding to employ several people, but then I realised that if I was going to continue doing that, I'd need to start something new with new funding. I had to ask myself if that was what I really wanted to do for the next few years. And I decided no. I didn't want to spend the last few years of my 60s with trying to get new funding, basically. So instead, I've tried to wean everyone off the assumption that I need to be part of everything. Now I suspect the more common question is, what happened to Garrett? I guess we don't need him on this. So it's time for me to take a back seat and try not to be so bothered by the state of the world. I'm not sure if that's possible, but let's see how it goes. So Trevor and I are just going to relax here. Thank you all.
Oh, that was